check in with the Wonderful Adventures of Niles by Selma Lagerlöf. And this is the Stairway with Three Steps chapter, which, or little section here, which, so Niles wakes up the next day after he just had, in the rainy weather, he had a rainy night where it was so wet and rainy. Here, I'm going to go back one section. It was so wet and rainy and he was so cold that he wanted to go and sit by a fire. So he snuck into a town, and he was kind of struck by all the wonderful things that human beings can do. It's interesting. Um, he's like, oh no, I just want to be in nature. I want to be lovely nature. But it's interesting that Selma Lagerlöf stops and says, well, no, wait a minute. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. You're a little boy who doesn't want to be constrained by lessons and by rules and stuff like this. But she has this wonderful section where he kind of realizes, oh, there's a lot of wonderful things about human society, not only just warm fires, but kind of the culture. He sees a young woman come out and kind of like, and the thing, and he has this strange little stirring, which I think is, he's pre-adolescent, but is probably an adolescent stirring of like, oh, someday I might want to be married to one of those, and have the joys of that, of a human relationship with another human being. There's also all the learning. Like, he doesn't know how he would get back, but he realizes, like, shit, I have not learned anything. I've been a terrible student. And there's so much learning that has been accumulated in my culture, in human culture in general, human civilization in general, that I'm missing out on. And he also talks about religion as well, as this is definitely a very Christian book in its themes, and that idea as well comes in here. So he's like, I want to get back. And then he hears an owl talking, something like, and they're talking about him, like he's become quite famous among animals, and saying like, oh well, the elf says that he can be a boy again, as long as he takes care of the goosey gander on their trip to this trip up to Lapland, and some other stuff. But let's go off, and I'll tell you that on a high stoop. And the boy, being an impetuous little boy, says, oh great, all I have to do is just be with the goosey gander to Lapland, and then I'll turn back into a boy. Oh boy. And then he goes back to them. There's probably going to be a little bit more, obviously. The owls we're going to talk about a little bit more, but he doesn't know that yet. And we, the readers, don't know that yet. And now in this second section, they're going north, but they find they've got some scouts who say like, well, this way is completely frozen. There's no water to be got. There's no forage to get. So we can't go this way. And so they decide to go a different way, and they're going to go over Blecking. And the boy's like, oh shit, I can't remember anything about Blecking because I was such a poor student. And then he remembers, like he was there again, and he recounts it as if he was there again, how his teacher, he was at the board, supposedly supposed to talk about Blecking, and had nothing to say, and he sent him back, and the boy then, oh god, this isn't going to end well. But then the teacher tells them a wonderful story about the Blecking and the stairs with the three steps. And the stairs with the three steps are obviously three plateaus, from the very highest to the very lowest one, going down to the water, and saying how like this one is fairly barren, not great soil. This one's much better. This one's the best, and has lots of soil. You can also do fishing and stuff like that. And talks about how a giant who stands at the top who got tired of having to go down, trundle down the steps in his old age to get salmon, so he threw giant rocks into the sea, scared the salmon so they would swim up the carved out rivers in the thing. And so yeah, it's just kind of this quite wonderful little origin story for this area. Obviously geographically, it's probably a good description of this area of Blecking, going up to Smallland, but it's just a nice little striking story to get there, which is really enjoyable, and comes nicely after him kind of going, oh, there's good parts about being a boy, of hey, here's something I learned. Someone told me, a teacher told me this story of this area. So now I know that, and it's kind of lodged in my head, and it's kind of lodged in my head now too. You know, don't know how well lodged in my head, but yeah, yeah, because yeah, and one can so yeah, so the giant is worthy of great thanks and much honor from the Blecking people for the salmon in the streams and the stone cutting on the island. That means work, which gives food to many of them, even to this day, is how it ends up. And so yeah, we'll go on to by Ronby River next, by Ronby River. All my butchering of all these names is quite terrible, but you know what you're gonna do.